In December 1967, a small team of doctors in South Africa attempted what many believed to be impossible: the first ever human heart transplant. At the time, such a procedure was widely regarded as a death sentence, and for good reason. How could anyone realistically believe that it was possible to take the heart of one person and successfully place it into another? It didn't just seem impossible, it was impossible. However, as the story goes, everything changed when Dr. Christiaan Barnard and his team defied the odds and made medical history. But behind the groundbreaking headlines lies a deeper story, one of meticulous preparation, ethical dilemmas, and a high-risk procedure with no guarantees. How did this controversial operation become a turning point in medical history? Let's take a closer look. The year was 1967. The world was at the height of scientific and cultural revolution. The Apollo missions were inching closer to putting a man on the moon, and medical science was making leaps just as extraordinary. But nothing shook the world quite like what happened on December the 3rd, 1967 in Cape Town, South Africa. At Groote Schuur Hospital, Dr. Christiaan Barnard and his team performed the first successful heart transplant on a human patient. The recipient, Louis Washkansky, received the heart of a young woman who had tragically died in a car accident. This daring procedure would change the course of medical history and captivate the world, but its outcome was far from a happy ending. Barnard's achievements ignited both awe and controversy, forever changing the landscape of medicine. What inspired this visionary surgeon to challenge the limits of medical science and attempt one of the most daring procedures in history? To find out, we need to explore the extraordinary path that led him to this moment. Chapter 1. A doctor's humble beginnings. Christiaan N. Barnard was born on November the 8th, 1922, in the small rural town of Beaufort West, South Africa. His family lived modestly. His father was a pastor, and his mother worked tirelessly to care for their 5 children. The young Christiaan grew up in a house of faith, but it was not an easy life. Poverty loomed large, and the harsh environment of the Karoo Desert loomed over the town. Despite their struggles, education was a priority in the Barnard household. Christiaan excelled academically, but his path to becoming a doctor was far from straightforward. After completing high school, he enrolled at the University of Cape Town to study medicine. One of his brothers, Abraham, passed away from a heart condition in his childhood, a loss that profoundly influenced Barnard's decision to specialize in cardiac surgery later in life. But his time at university was no easy ride. South Africa, during the 1940s, was grappling with systemic inequality and a lack of advanced medical infrastructure. Barnard had to work relentlessly to prove himself, often pushing through grueling hours of study and hospital work. After graduating in 1946, Barnard began his medical career as a general practitioner in the small town of Cardiothoracic. Yet, his ambition stretched far beyond the confines of rural medicine. He returned to the University of Cape Town to specialize in surgery under the mentorship of Professor Jannie Louw, a renowned South African surgeon. It was here that Barnard's fascination with the heart began to take shape. In the mid-1950s, Barnard's career took a significant turn. He was awarded a scholarship to the University of Minnesota in the United States, where he trained under Dr. Owen Wangenstein, a pioneer in modern surgery. It was also during this time that Barnard began working with Dr. C. Walton Lillehei, who was at the forefront of heart surgery innovation. While in Minnesota, Barnard made a groundbreaking discovery of his own. He identified the cause of a congenital condition known as intestinal atresia, a birth defect that prevents the intestines from forming properly. His innovative surgical technique to treat the condition would go on to save countless infants worldwide. But what truly captured Barnard's attention was the rapidly advancing field of cardiac surgery. At the time, heart-lung bypass machines were revolutionizing the ability to perform intricate surgeries on the human heart. Techniques like valve replacements and open heart procedures were being developed, but the idea of transplanting a human heart was still seen as science fiction. Barnard returned to South Africa in 1958 with a wealth of knowledge and a fierce determination to push the boundaries of medicine. At Groote Schuur Hospital, he established a cardiac unit where he began conducting experiments on heart transplantation. Heart transplantation was a concept that had been debated for decades. As early as the 1940s, surgeons like Dr. Vladimir Demiko in the Soviet Union had performed experimental heart transplants on dogs. But these procedures were far from successful. In 1964, Dr. James Hardy in Mississippi performed the first heart transplant on a human, replacing the deceased heart with that of a chimpanzee. The patient, however, died just hours later, highlighting the immense challenges involved. Barnard's work in South Africa was met with skepticism by some in the international medical community. Many doubted whether he had the resources or expertise to achieve what the world's best hospitals had failed to accomplish. But Barnard remained determined. He believed that the key to success was not just surgical skill, but also timing. Advances in immunosuppressive drugs like cortisone were beginning to make organ transplantation viable by reducing the risk of rejection. By the mid-1960s, Barnard had refined his techniques and assembled a highly skilled surgical team. The world was inching closer to witnessing the first successful human heart transplant. All that remained was the right patient, the right donor, and the courage to take the leap. Fortunately for Christiaan, everything he needed was right around the corner. Chapter 2: One man's career, another man's life. On December 2nd, 1967, in Cape Town, South Africa, the events leading up to one of the most daring surgeries in medical history began to unfold. Christiaan Barnard, armed with a meticulous plan, a highly trained team, and a revolutionary vision, prepared to attempt what had only been theorized before: the first human heart transplant. The stakes were unimaginably high, and the room was thick with tension and hope. Denise Darvall, a 25-year-old woman who tragically became brain dead after a car accident earlier that day, would become an organ donor. She and her mother had been crossing the street when a car struck them. Denise's mother died instantly, while Denise was rushed to Groote Schuur Hospital with severe brain injuries. Despite every effort to save her, it became clear that she would never recover. This grim reality, however, presented a life-saving opportunity for another patient in desperate need. Denise's father made the difficult decision to allow her heart to be used for the groundbreaking surgery, a decision that would place her name in the annals of medical history. Edward Darvall said later that in the 4 minutes it took him to reach his decision, he thought only of his daughter. He remembered a birthday cake she had once made for him. She had carved a heart into the icing and written the words, "Daddy, we love you," across the top of the cake. He also remembered that, with her first week's salary from the bank, she had bought him a bathrobe. That was Denise. That was his girl. That was how he would always think of her. She was full of love. She always wanted to give rather than take. He knew that the world needed more people like her, and now Denise and her mother were lost to him. He began to cry, and it was in that moment that he knew what needed to be done. After composing himself, he summoned the doctors back into the small room. Bossman and Venter would never forget his words. "If you can't save my daughter," he said, "you must try and save this man." The recipient was a 53-year-old Louis Washkansky, a man who had been battling end-stage heart failure, a man battling diabetes and multiple other health complications. Louis had been living on borrowed time. Traditional treatments had failed him, and his only chance of survival lay in the uncharted waters of a heart transplant. Washkansky, ever the optimist, agreed to the surgery without hesitation. The preparation for the surgery was nothing short of monumental. Barnard had spent years studying and perfecting the procedure, performing heart transplants on animals and learning from international experts, like Norman Shumway, a pioneer in transplant surgery. Barnard's team, consisting of 30 highly skilled medical professionals, rehearsed the operation meticulously, preparing for every possible scenario. Every tool, every suture, every protocol was triple-checked. Yet, this wasn't merely a logistical challenge. It was also an ethical and legal one. South African law at the time did not have clear guidelines for organ donation, particularly around the concept of brain death. This provided Barnard with an opportunity that would have been legally impossible in the United States, where legislation in 1967 did not permit organ retrieval from brain-dead but heart-beating donors. Denise Darvall's case provided a rare opportunity as her brain function had ceased completely, but her heart could still be kept alive artificially. Barnard and his team carefully timed the moment to remove her heart, ensuring it remained viable for transplantation. Barnard's surgical team was handpicked for their expertise and ability to work under immense pressure. Each member had a specific role, from managing the cardiopulmonary bypass machine to monitoring the donor heart's viability. Among them was Barnard's brother, Marius, also a surgeon, who played a key role in the operation. Their dynamic showcased the importance of collaboration in such a high-stakes environment. Barnard later credited the success of the surgery not just to his vision, but to the flawless execution of his team. In the early hours of December 3rd, 1967, the surgery began. It was a race against time. Denise's heart had to be removed, cooled, and transplanted into Washkansky's chest within hours to prevent tissue damage. Barnard made the first incision himself, and the operating room fell into a practiced rhythm. The team placed Washkansky on a cardiopulmonary bypass machine, which took over the functions of the heart and lungs during the operation, and proceeded to remove his failing heart. Meanwhile, Denise's heart was carefully removed by another team in the adjoining operating room and transported to Barnard's team on ice, a crucial step to preserve the organ's viability. The actual transplantation was a feat of technical brilliance. Barnard delicately attached Denise's heart to Washkansky's major blood vessels, stitching the aorta and pulmonary arteries with precision that left no room for error. After connecting the last suture, the team prepared to restart the donor heart. The tension in the room was palpable as they waited for it to respond. The heart quivered, then began to beat, slowly at first. Then with growing strength, Washkansky's blood began circulating through his new heart, and the team erupted in cautious optimism. The impossible had been achieved. For the first time in history, a human heart had been successfully transplanted into another person. 20 years later, Marius Barnard recounted, "Chris stood there for a few moments watching, then stood back and said, 'It works.' The surgery took approximately 5 hours, and as dawn broke over Cape Town, the world had unknowingly entered a new era of medicine. For Barnard and his team, however, there was no time to celebrate. The real challenge lay ahead, ensuring the new heart would function properly, and that Washkansky's body would not reject it. But for a brief moment in the operating room, the team knew that they had witnessed something extraordinary, and that they had changed medicine forever. Medicine is full of risks. Some pay off, and some don't. But this wasn't the first time doctors attempted the impossible. I put together a free guide featuring 5 of the most shocking, unbelievable, and downright terrifying moments in medical history. Want to know what early surgeons did before anesthesia? Or how one mistake changed medicine forever? Grab your free copy now. Just click the top link in the description and I'll send it straight to your inbox. Chapter 3: Triumph and Tragedy. When Louis Washkansky awoke from surgery on December 4th, 1967, history had already been made. The man with a failing heart now had a second chance at life, thanks to the unprecedented effort of Christiaan Barnard and his surgical team. Washkansky, though groggy from anesthesia and heavily monitored, was alive, and his new heart was beating strongly. It was a monumental achievement. Post-operative care was intense. Washkansky was placed in a sterile isolation unit to minimize the risk of infection, a critical concern for transplant recipients whose immune systems were weakened by immunosuppressive drugs. These drugs, experimental at the time, were administered to prevent Washkansky's body from rejecting Denise Darvall's heart. Though the surgery itself was groundbreaking, rejection was a shadow that loomed over the recovery process. Doctors knew that they were working against time, navigating uncharted waters to keep Washkansky alive. The world, however, didn't wait for the final outcome. Through a series of phone calls, the Prime Minister of South Africa had been told of the success of the operation. News of the successful heart transplant spread like wildfire, capturing the imagination of millions. Barnard, once a relatively unknown surgeon from South Africa, was catapulted into global fame overnight. Headlines hailed the feat as a miracle of modern medicine, and Barnard became an instant celebrity. Media outlets from around the world descended on Cape Town, eager to interview the surgeon who had dared to rewrite medical history. In fact, this is something I plan on doing in the future with some of the doctors and other medical professionals I cover, so make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to see it in action. At the time of the first transplant, neither Barnard nor his team anticipated the enormity of what they had accomplished. In fact, no photographers were present during the surgery, not because of secrecy, but because the team genuinely didn't think it would become such a monumental event. Within hours, however, offers poured in, including an astonishing $1 million for a photograph of the donor heart being placed into Louis Washkansky's chest. Photos that didn't exist. Even Barnard's discarded surgical gloves, tossed casually in the trash after the procedure, became objects of obsession, with a newspaper offering $25,000 for them. The team quickly realized that they were at the center of a global media storm, unlike anything they had ever imagined. The attention was overwhelming. Barnard, though celebrated as a pioneer, struggled with the sudden glare of the spotlight. Reporters camped outside Groote Schuur Hospital, waiting for updates on Washkansky's condition. Politicians and dignitaries sent congratulatory messages, while the medical community buzzed with debates about the ethics and implications of organ transplantation. Barnard remained composed, deflecting questions about its personal fame and emphasizing that the success was a team effort. The public's fascination with the surgery extended far beyond mere curiosity. For weeks, headlines about the operation dominated newspapers around the world. People wrote letters of support, offering prayers for both Washkansky and Barnard. Others were more skeptical, voicing concerns about the ethics of such a groundbreaking procedure. Hospitals began to see an influx of patients asking if they too could receive a heart transplant. The operation had ignited a global conversation, not just about medical possibilities, but about what it meant to prolong life. Barnard's achievements also stood out against the backdrop of South Africa's political and social climate in the 1960s. The country was deeply divided by apartheid, with systemic racism affecting every aspect of life, including healthcare. Despite these challenges, Groote Schuur Hospital had emerged as a center of medical innovation, attracting talented doctors like Barnard. His accomplishment became a rare unifying moment for South Africa as people across racial and social divides celebrated the nation's role in advancing global medicine. For Washkansky, the media frenzy was both uplifting and exhausting. Although he was too weak to give interviews, the public was in awe of him, and he became a symbol of both medical innovation and human resilience. Yet, behind the scenes, his recovery was fraught with complications. Unfortunately, despite the initial success of the surgery, Washkansky's condition began to deteriorate after just a few weeks. His body, weakened by the stress of the transplant and the heavy doses of immunosuppressants, succumbed to pneumonia on December 21st, 1967, only 18 days after the operation. The cause of death was not organ rejection, as many feared, but rather the infection that his compromised immune system couldn't fight. Washkansky's death was a devastating blow to Barnard and his team. While they had prepared for the possibility, losing their first patient was a painful reminder of how much there was still to learn about heart transplantation. The operation had succeeded in principle, providing it was possible to transplant a human heart and have it function in another body. But the challenges of keeping the recipient alive post-surgery remained daunting. The public reaction to Washkansky's death was mixed. While many mourned his loss, they recognized the significance of what had been accomplished. Washkansky had volunteered for the procedure, knowing the risk, and in doing so, he had paved the way for future advancements in transplantation. His bravery, combined with Barnard's determination, had opened a door that could never be closed. As for Barnard, Washkansky's death marked the beginning of a new chapter in his career. The experience was both humbling and motivating. He knew his work wasn't finished, and the lesson learned from Washkansky's case would guide his future endeavors. The world had witnessed a moment of unprecedented courage and innovation, and despite the tragedy, the hope it inspired was undeniable. Chapter 4: A legacy cemented. Following the groundbreaking success of the first heart transplant, Dr. Christiaan Barnard found himself thrust into the spotlight as a global medical icon. The fame brought with it both acclaim and controversy. Over the next few years, Barnard performed several more heart transplants, gradually refining the technique. The second transplant, conducted shortly after Louis Washkansky's, proved to be even more significant. The recipient, Philip Leiberg, survived for an astonishing 19 months, a milestone that demonstrated the potential for heart transplantation to move from an experimental procedure to a viable medical practice. The first heart transplant had immediate ripple effects across the global medical community. Hospitals worldwide began accelerating their transplant programs, inspired by Barnard's work. At the same time, the procedure forced researchers to confront the ethical and logistical challenges of organ donation, leading to the development of stricter guidelines for donor consent and organ preservation. Barnard's operation became a case study, not just for his surgical techniques, but for the ethical framework it demanded from modern medicine. Barnard's growing fame saw him navigate a complex intersection of medicine and celebrity. He met world leaders, flew around the world for public speaking, and used his platform to advocate for advancements in medical science. However, the 1960s and 70s also saw heart transplantation face significant hurdles, especially with issues of organ rejection. This challenge tempered some of the initial enthusiasm, as survival rates remained low until the development of cyclosporine and immunosuppressant in the 1980s. Outside the operating room, Barnard's personal life was equally eventful. He wrote multiple books, including One Life and A Second Life, chronicling his journey and the ethical dilemmas he faced. His charisma made him a sought-after speaker, but also brought scrutiny to his lifestyle, including his multiple marriages and high-profile relationships. Barnard's relationship with the media was complex. While he initially shied away from the spotlight, he quickly recognized the power of public relations in advancing medical causes. He gave carefully worded interviews and posed for photographs, not out of vanity, but to build public trust in organ transplantation. However, the relentless attention often frustrated him, as it detracted from the scientific and humanitarian aspects of his work. Balancing the demands of fame with his responsibilities as a surgeon became one of the greatest challenges of his career. Barnard retired from surgery in 1983 due to rheumatoid arthritis in his hands, which made performing operations increasingly difficult. Even in retirement, he continued to contribute to the medical field as a lecturer and through his foundation, which focused on healthcare for underprivileged communities. On September 2nd, 2001, at the age of 78, Dr. Christiaan Barnard passed away after suffering an asthma attack while vacationing in Cyprus. His death marked the end of an era, but his pioneering work left an indelible mark on medicine. By the time of his death, heart transplantation had become a routine procedure with thousands of lives saved annually, a testament to the path he blazed. Barnard's legacy is a story of unrelenting ambition, groundbreaking innovation, and a passion for improving the human condition. His willingness to push boundaries of what was possible in medicine not only changed surgical history, but also redefined humanity's understanding of life and death. Today, Christiaan Barnard's story continues to inspire surgeons, scientists, and medical professionals around the world. His groundbreaking achievements in heart transplantation are a reminder of the power of vision and determination. By daring to attempt the impossible, he not only transformed the landscape of medicine, but also gave countless people the gift of time, a legacy that endures to this day. But he isn't the only man who dared to take on the impossible in an attempt to change medicine forever. There was another man, so bold, so crazy, that he willingly drank deadly bacteria. To learn more, click the video I'm showing on screen now.